You guys know where I am, just in case you don't. Little pond check today. For anybody new joining, this little pond we stocked in 2022. It's going into its third year. And do a little fishing and algae control, and go over here and check out the fish feeders. Oh yeah, check this out. Stopped at Bull Shad Swim Baits. Got me a new custom trick shad. You know, the small one. That dog will hunt down in Florida. I actually had Jen painted up. I sent her, had a picture of the shad down there. Got the new Shoaly with me. What's up, Frank? Getting ready to take the maiden pond voyage in the Shoaly kayak that I got from Drew Gregory last week. As you can see, pond activity. We got a little filamentous algae popping up. That's what that is. Pretty normal. Welcome aboard, everyone. Just checking out the pond. And let's go check out the feeder over there. Got a new feeder going. Got a couple of these. It's an Amazon deal. Good price, $500, I think. About a third of the price almost of some of these other feeders. And I'm an Amazon influencer page now over there, so I get cuts on all this stuff. Can you guys see the bluegill in there? Oh, they're getting happy. Let's see, there should be a test button somewhere. See if I can figure it out. What they got going here. This is a little difficult to do with one hand. I'm going to give up on that and try later on figuring that out. But when you can't figure out the feeder, you can always just throw in the fish feed. And they appear to be running for their lives. I don't know if you guys can see that bass go through there. So you get a little algae popping up because what goes in one end of the fish comes out the other and creates a little fertility issue. That was a nice bass right there. Well, they're looking really, really good. I can already see a difference in the size of the fish. I think this automatic feeder's doing good. Sorry about the camera work. Try to do this opposite. There are some really big bluegill in here. See them? So our bass are now getting onto the size that they can come up and feed on them bigger bluegill, and they're going to really accelerate with growth. I don't know how many Clint's harvested. We've already started taking a few out. Here comes some grass carp. Let me flip this around. You guys see the size of the grass carp right there? There's one right there. Yeah, there's one right there. They're getting big. They don't eat filamentous algae. They'll control probably about 80% of the weeds you get in here. Man, it has been stained this year. It's been a lot of rain. Stained water. But that's okay because we got the feeder. When you get a lot of muddy water, it'll shade the phytoplankton bloom. It'll reduce the productivity of the pond. But this feeder offsets that quite a bit. Man, there's a nice bass right there. I can see. I don't think you guys can see him with the glare on the water. That's an uncountable number of bluegill, and they're looking exceptionally good. Let's take a little stroll. You guys throw any questions down there if you got them. I'll try to answer them anyway. So like I said, we've been tracking the growth on these fish. Got Floridas and Northerns in the same pond. And the northern bass are outgrowing the Floridas because this is North Georgia, not Central Florida. That's the pattern I've noticed a lot over the years. Depends on where you stock Florida bass as to how good it grows. There's another grass carp. And one thing that came up that people always holler at me about is, well, you've got no aquatic weeds. And that's intentional because right up there are trees that they irrigate. They use this water for irrigation. So I can't put chemicals into the water or I'll mess up the irrigation process. That's a benthic form of algae that peels off the bottom and comes up. Treat that too. Scaring the grass carp. They're up here probably trying to pull grass off the edges because there's no weeds in the pond. Kind of like water cows, if you will. This algae will actually burn off. It's usually like a springtime problem, and it is not hotter than the 7th level of hell like it is in Florida right now here. So springtime temperatures bring springtime algae problems, and if you don't treat it, it can get out of control in some places, but I wouldn't consider this out of control. A little bit of an eyesore, but what I define a weed problem is it inhibiting fishing or boating, or if you swim, swimming. And I'd say no on all three of that. You know, you might get it snagged a little bit, but it's not really causing too much problems. So I wouldn't go too crazy with the treatments on it just yet. I have seen it cover ponds, 3 inches thick, and that's bad. You gotta treat it then for certain. But I don't see any other grass growing in there. A little bit of primrose back there, but the grass carp are so hungry they pull the leaves off of that. Some willows coming up. Soil stabilization doesn't hurt my feelings on this edge, and shade and roots. Anyway, back to everybody getting mad at me about not having weeds. Like I was at the Elite Series when the pros were in Palatka, and the biologist got up there and talked about how important the weeds were for the recruitment of the bass in the St. Johns River. He was talking about eelgrass and how they're doing eelgrass recovery projects because hurricanes had wiped out the eelgrass. And of course, everybody blamed the DNR, or down there the FWC, for spraying all the weeds out of the St. Johns River, which is really not physically possible. It just shows you how clueless people are. And hurricanes came in, changed the water quality, and killed all the eelgrass, which dropped the bass recruitment. So the biologist was up there talking about how they're restoring the eelgrass to restore the bass recruitment, to get, make sure the bass populations stay. That's primrose right there. It could be a real problem, but it's not in here. So the grass carp have done a decent job controlling it, so I haven't even sprayed it. A little bit of weeds around like that doesn't bother me at all. That's good habitat. But back to the point, the St. Johns River is not this pond. We don't have any problems with recruitment here. As a matter of fact, we had a fall spawn on our bass last year, if you guys watched the electrofishing survey. So that's why we started pulling some bass out. I can kind of recognize when it's happening, and I did that. So we're taking some bass out to make sure that the fish population doesn't get overcrowded. Most bass populations are overcrowded. It's like a small farm out here. Check these guys out. I guess they're gonna come see us. All right, come on. I don't have any food for you. I'm sure you'd think I got food, but I don't. I don't have anything. I didn't know you were going to be so friendly. You might not be very friendly. You're a stinky goat. So he uses the animals to keep the woods clear, kind of the same way we use the grass cart to keep the weeds clear. And in the pond, we don't need the weeds to have successful bass spawns like they do in the St. Johns River, because this isn't the St. Johns River, right? There's no other predators out here. I don't even know how many different species of predator are in the St. Johns River. Not to mention the species of predator like dolphins and bull sharks and everything that could come in from the coast in the St. Johns River. There's shrimp down there. There's crabs down there. It's a very unique type of place. So when people go listen to the biologists talk about the habitat restoration in the St. Johns and how important it is, that sticks in their head, and they come back and they want to play that game with their pond. And it's kind of the opposite, because that's not the St. Johns River right there. As you can see, that's a 2.5 acre pond. So that's how misinformation gets going. And it's not understanding the variables, right? Let me, all right, Steven, I can't talk about that. I'll get hit. Oh, I'm gonna check the bass weights, Bob. Probably throw a jerkbait around a little bit. The Florida bass seem to take the jerkbait and the little reaction strikes a little bit better. So I'll start with a jerkbait. What do we use in Clint's pond for cover? So that's a good question, Frank. Let's just walk back down the bank, and from a higher vantage point, we might be able to see it. We did a lot of cover. Let me switch it around so you're not looking at my ugly mug. So we've got brush piles, sticks, and blowdowns. There's a creek channel just on the other side of that shallow hump. There's a stump that they rolled in from off the property. And every so often, you can't see them, but every so often there'll be a stump ball. I can't remember how many we used, maybe 10. There's one right there. See it? So stumps with roots that were rolled upside down, so the roots kind of stick upwards, right? And then we brought in rock. I'm kind of walking up on the rock right now. You can see it right there. All right, and that's more of a rock for looking pretty than it is for fish habitat. But there's also piles of rocks, and there's another stump that we put in. Okay, so there's rock like this down on the bottom as well. And then we come around. That's a nice ledge for a rock, a little nice rock habitat around the edge right here. And it's more for standing and fishing on than it is for habitat. But as you can see, we got a nice stump. That kind of marks this is all shallow in here. This was all excavated out to make the pond bigger. And then the depth comes out here, and the creek channel runs through there. Of course, we got the blowdown out there. The cedar tree's been blown in, and they cut all the limbs off the top of the cedar tree and stuffed them back down into the blowdown. Another stump right there by the dock. We have an American fish tree. I'll walk to it. They were kind enough to donate to the pond. So we've got some artificial habitat like that in here as well. We've also got gravel that's fluffed up on geofabric. I don't know if you can see the geofabric anywhere, if I can see it. Here's some. See this fabric? Okay, so it goes all the way out into the bottom, and out there a couple feet are some gravel beds for the bluegill to spawn on. So that brings us back to, we've got enough. None of what I just described can grow wild and out of control and take over the pond. And what guys don't realize is it's 2.5 acres of water. So if you let the weeds get out of control, once it goes past 30% weed coverage, which out here would be very easy to do very quickly, they could grow over it in just a couple of weeks. Aquatic weeds grow very fast. Once you go past 30%, the bass can't hunt in those weeds, and it'll start negatively impacting bass weights and negatively impacted the fish population. Once you go past 50% weeds coverage, now you're getting into territory where, and another fact guys don't know, the weeds use oxygen at night. They create it in the daytime, but they use it at night. So if you let weeds grow out of control in a pond, you can have a fish killed from oxygen depletion just because you let the weeds grow out of control. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on a job site and the people are like, well, you know, I know the weeds are good for the pond. And I'm like, the weeds have killed your pond. You've let it go 80%, you've let it grow over and stay grown over for 3 years. Your fish population's toast. And they just don't know it, you know? I mean, why would they know it? Who comes on here and talks about this crap besides me? So like I said, we get a little deeper right in here. Got another stump. We did not put the cattails there. They just showed up from dingleberries like him coming in. They eat the seeds off the bottom and then they crap and they bring you weeds. So actually some forms of aquatic weeds have to pass through the gut of a waterfowl and be crapped out before they're even viable. You guys see the bluegill? Man, there's a lot of big bluegill in here. Yeah, you boys are fixing to have a lot less fun, I can promise you. Our bass are coming up over 5 pounds now, which is really good growth for 2 years. Again, rocks, concretes. Here's a boat ramp that Clint made, but that'll give you an idea. Ooh, somebody's just getting whacked. Highly aggressive, highly predatory. So what's happening is the bluegill are following me because they think I'm going to throw food. They're not paying attention. The bass take that advantage and eat them. But this is a real good example of what of many places in the bottom of the pond look like, Frank. We've got gravel fluffed up on that fabric. So, and the reason it's on that fabric is if you don't put it on the fabric, it'll just sink, just get taken into the bottom of the pond and get swallowed up. So the geofabric helps keep your gravel fluffed up, which keeps your edges. All this is surface area, right? When this is underwater, all right, all this creates surface area, and that surface area is placed for what's called periphyton. It's a lot of different zooplanktons and algae and things like that. So it's a good place for something like crawfish to come and scrape and eat. It's also a good place for bluegill to come pick zooplankton out of. 50% of their diet is zooplankton. So we've created a lot of surface area, not much different than an aquarium, where you create rocks in the bottom of the aquarium, create surface area for the bacteria that help process out the ammonia and things like that. Well, we're using it as fish habitat. We've got some trees. And again, a few more, there's some more primrose kind of squeaking up through there. Not enough for me to worry about, not enough to spray. I'm not worried about that. If you guys need help with doing any kind of treatments, right now, probably the best place is Instagram. I've had the subscriber page there a little bit longer, so I've got how you use these weeds, algicides and herbicides to kill these weeds and algae on there, and I can consult with you if you're unfamiliar with it, because it's really important that you don't misuse herbicides in the water. I'm not going to walk the whole pond, and I'm going to get back in the shade, and because I can't see this phone, if there's any questions. An advertisement for Clint. He's a landscape architect. Does great work too. Stuff like this. He's got all kinds of outdoor patio stuff. You can see how the rain has just washed the mulch. That's why the water's muddy like that. Put this trash in the back of the truck. And check for questions. And I'm not going to hang out with you boys too much longer because I'm going to go fishing. The shade's starting to come across. We'll touch on that though. So as especially on nothing banks where you don't have any kind of structure or cover. I noticed this to run an electrofishing boat all those years. Now that side of the pond is awesome with the cover and everything. Fish just rolled right there. But let's say it's not. Let's just say that's a nothing bank over there that you never catch anything on, right? But you see how that shade line is being created by the trees and where the sun is? All right, that'll change a nothing bank because bass have a visual advantage. Sitting in this shade where I am, if you're standing out in that sunlight, right, out there, it's much harder to see me in the shade than it is for me to see you in the light. And bass know that just instinctively. So they'll use that shade line as cover, even though there's no cover there, because any fish that's out in the light swimming around, especially these knuckleheads that are around this feeder, will get too close to them unknowingly. And I just learned, I learned that from running a shock boat. You run a shock boat down that bank, that nothing bank, in the middle of the afternoon when there's no shade across it, and you don't catch any fish. But you make another lap around the lake a couple hours later, and all of a sudden you're picking bass up along the shade line, in the electrofishing surveys. And like I said, it's just a pattern I noticed over and over and over again that I began to notice. Since I noticed it with the electrofishing boat, I began to fish shade lines more often. And not only will you find the fish there, but you're also finding the fish that are more actively feeding, because that's what they're doing on that shade line, is hunting. So my catch rates at about 20 years old went up dramatically from working on an electrofishing boat. Both on that, Frank. Frank's asking, is it more beneficial for bluegill or aquatic insects? The other half of aquatic insects diet a bluegill's diet is aquatic insects. So about 50% aquatic insects, 50% zooplankton. So all those little cracks and crevices create areas for the bugs to scrape. There's a whole dynamic food web of aquatic insects, hundreds of species of them. And some of them are, like I said, scrapers. Some of them are filter feeders that filter zooplankton and other particles out of the water. Caddis flies in streams will build like webs, like a spider, to capture particles coming down the stream and filter the water that way. In a pond, the top predator in a pond is a dragonfly larva. So you got all the scrapers and all the different kinds of bugs down there. And then the dragonfly is the predator. He's the apex predator of the bottom of the pond from an aquatic insect perspective. And sorry, I think the pollen's getting me. So the dragonfly a dragonfly stays larva for 3 years, will stay in the pond for 3 years before it emerges out, flies around, mates, lays eggs, and dies. But its life cycle as a larva it's a 3-year-old, pretty much rolling ball of butcher knives down there. Nothing aquatic insect wise can come close to a dragonfly larva. That's the worst possible thing you can have around you if you're an aquatic insect in this pond. So like I said, like the bluegill or the predators or the bluegill or the forage for the bass are the apex predators, dragonfly larvae, the apex predators for the insect population. And it's a pretty simple food web. You want to keep it a pretty simple food web. I intentionally don't have, I've got bass and bluegill in here. That's it. That's another place guys mess up all the time. They put in too many varieties of fish. The more different species of fish you put in there, the more complex you make the management. And certain species of fish make the pond unmanageable. Pond management's not lake management. So again, like if you're listening to the biologist for the state talk about the management of the major reservoirs and trying to apply that in a pond, you're doing it wrong. That's a good question. Fishy's asking where you can find a peacock bass. I don't know. I've caught a few, but I mean, even in Florida, I live in Central Florida, and they're still like 4 hours south of me. I'm east of Gainesville, so they start pretty far down in Florida. I don't have an answer for that, man. Sorry. Oh, One Life's asking, is there a lake with aquatic plants? Yeah, sure, man. I mean, you can have aquatic plants in a lake are going to be beneficial up to about the same area, about 30% coverage, 40% coverage. You'll see a kind of a benefit, especially in the recruitment of bass. It gives bass places to hide, to avoid all the predators that are in a lake. You know, you've got, like my guy said, in Florida, you got peacock bass, you've got gar, 3-4 different species of gar. You've got crappie, you've got cichlids of all kinds, snakeheads. I mean, my Lord, the list of fish in a public reservoir in Florida is endless. And understanding the biology of that is complex. This is simple. So that's why we use this place. Simply put, you got to crawl before you walk. If you don't understand a simple bass bluegill system and how to manage it, there's no way on earth you can go understand a 36 species, 10,000 acre reservoir. But I get guys arguing with me all the time that think they understand that stuff. And I mean, I don't know how they do. I mean, I don't understand it. Jason Dotson's coming on. He's the head of the Florida Research Division on largemouth bass. And that'll be a good live. I'm looking forward to that one, because I've already, just in talking to Jason at the Elite Series, I've already learned so much. And I don't know, I think that should say something to anybody watching who thinks they know all about this from going fishing. I've been managing ponds for 30 years, and I'm still learning every day from other biologists and other guys with different experience, you know? So your stupid is kind of showing if you're thinking that going fishing is making you smart at this, because this is a lifetime of learning. And I was jump started in my learning process with a professional degree from the University of Georgia. And what that means is, like, if you go to Georgia and get like a vet degree, that's professional. Pharmacy, that's professional. Law school, that's professional. You're trained to do a job at college. It's no different than going to vocational school, learning how to be an electrician, learning how to be a plumber, learning how to be a mechanic for Nissan or Honda or Ford or whatever, where you learn a job. That's the education that I received from Georgia. It's a professional degree. And then I was fortunate enough to use this professionally as a pond manager for 30 years. So I'm not coming from a place of theory, you know. I'm coming from a place of walking around on the ground and doing it, and telling people what happens when you do this. And I guess the biggest part that drives me is the amount of people who just don't listen and think that watching television makes them a biologist. Hey, what's up, Steven? There's one of my boys right there from UGA, Mr. Patrick. That's right, man. I stay in my lane. You don't see me giving advice on how to win the Bassmaster Classic, do you? So why should the winner of the Bassmaster Classic be giving you advice on how to manage a fishery? He absolutely should not, but, you know, try to explain that to him. Actually, I think with my efforts and the efforts of some other social influencers, that dynamic has changed a lot in the past few years, and I intend to make it change completely. Because, like I said, I stay in my lane. This is what I do, this is what I've done, this is what I understand, this is what I can help you do. Manage ponds and small lakes. If you've got a 10,000 acre reservoir, I'm gonna refer you to a different biologist. That's not, you're out of my lane. Yeah. Job security is right, Stephen. Anyway, boys, we're already running on 30 minutes, and I don't know, the wind's picking up, and I got a new kayak to fish out of. I'll take pictures. but I'm not going to stay live and fish. It's a real hassle, honestly, to try to be a biologist, treat algae, go fishing, and film the whole thing, then edit the whole thing. I mean, you're doing 4 and 5 jobs at one time. It's really, really hard. It's harder than people think to do this kind of work and film it and make it make sense. It's very challenging. I think I couldn't have done this right out of school. My experience talking with pond owners over 30 years allows me to articulate in this way. But that's what's going on at the pond, boys. Everything's looking good, and hopefully I'll have some pictures to post tonight. That's a nice bass that I catch. And as always, I appreciate you guys following and keeping up with the page and learning. And let's just keep learning and move forward and stop these circular negative arguments that always come from the same place of misinformation, really. Take it easy, Frank. I appreciate you, brother. See you guys next time.